A knock on the door reveals a mysterious baby, left with nothing but a cryptic note. For a millionaire and his wife, this tiny visitor changes everything. Stay tuned for a tale of love, redemption, and choices that will test the limits of their humanity. Mark and Evelyn Dawson had it all, or so it seemed. Mark, a self-made millionaire, was at the peak of his career, running a thriving investment firm. His days were filled with meetings, phone calls, and decisions that shaped industries. Evelyn, on the other hand, filled her days with charitable work and community events, trying to bring light to the lives of those less fortunate. Their sprawling estate was a picture of perfection, with manicured lawns, gleaming marble floors, and luxurious furnishings. But beneath the surface, their relationship was strained. Mark's relentless pursuit of success had left him distant, and Evelyn's longing for a child, a dream they had been unable to fulfill, cast a quiet shadow over their lives. While they smiled for cameras at galas and fundraisers, their home felt empty, their conversations shallow. One crisp autumn evening, a knock on their massive oak door shattered their routine. Evelyn opened the door to find a baby, swaddled in a soft blue blanket, lying in a small wicker basket. The baby's wide, innocent eyes gazed up at her, and her heart immediately melted. Attached to the basket was a note. "Please give him the life I can't. His name is Noah." Mark was called to the doorway, his face a mix of confusion and irritation. "Who would leave a baby here? This is insane," he said, stepping back as though the tiny child was a disruption to his carefully ordered world. Evelyn, however, saw something different. Cradling Noah in her arms, she whispered, "Mark, maybe this is a sign. Maybe he's meant to be here." Despite Evelyn's instant attachment, Mark was hesitant. His mind raced with logistical concerns. How could they verify the child's identity? What were the legal ramifications? And most of all, what would people think? Evelyn pleaded with him to let the baby stay, at least for the night, until they could figure out the next steps. Begrudgingly, Mark agreed, but his cold demeanor made it clear that he saw Noah as a problem, not a blessing. As the night wore on, Evelyn found herself captivated by Noah's tiny fingers and gentle coos. She stayed by his side in the guest room, rocking him to sleep, while Mark retreated to his office, poring over paperwork as though ignoring the situation would make it disappear. The next morning, Evelyn contacted a social worker, who informed them that a legal investigation would be required to determine the baby's origins. Until then, they were asked to care for Noah as temporary guardians. For Evelyn, this news was a ray of hope. For Mark, it was a complication he wanted to avoid. Despite Mark's resistance, Evelyn insisted they do everything they could for the baby. As the days passed, Evelyn's maternal instincts blossomed, while Mark struggled to reconcile his emotions. Noah's presence was a challenge to his carefully constructed life, but for Evelyn, it was a chance to fill the void in her heart. Their opposing reactions to Noah created tension in their household, setting the stage for the emotional journey ahead, a journey that would test their love, their values, and their ability to change. The days turned into weeks, and Noah's presence began to ripple through Mark and Evelyn's lives in unexpected ways. Evelyn embraced her role as a caretaker with a joy that felt foreign but deeply fulfilling. She spent her mornings feeding and bathing Noah, her afternoons reading him stories, and her evenings humming lullabies as he drifted off to sleep. Each moment with him seemed to heal a part of her soul she hadn't realized was broken. Mark, however, remained resistant. He would glance at Noah in passing but never allowed himself to fully engage. His life revolved around deadlines and boardroom meetings, and the cries of a baby in the background were an unwelcome distraction. Evelyn tried to draw him in, asking him to hold Noah during feedings or to join them for a walk in the garden, but Mark always found an excuse. Evelyn's frustration grew. One evening, as they sat in their grand but silent dining room, she confronted him. "Mark, why can't you see what I see? He's not just a baby left on our doorstep. He's a chance for us to be a family." Mark sighed, setting down his fork. Evelyn, you're letting your emotions cloud your judgment. We don't know anything about him. What if his parents come back? What if this complicates everything? Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. Complicate what? Our perfect empty life? The tension between them only deepened when their close friends and family learned about Noah. Mark's business partner, Alan, warned him about the potential public relations fallout. This isn't the kind of attention we need right now, Alan said, his tone dripping with concern. You're a respected figure in the financial world, Mark. This could be seen as reckless. Meanwhile, Evelyn's sister, Clara, offered a different perspective. Over tea one afternoon, she gently suggested, "Maybe this is exactly what you and Mark need. You've always wanted a child, Evelyn. Don't let fear dictate your choices." Amid this external pressure, Evelyn discovered Noah's charm was undeniable. Even their housekeeper, Rosa, who had initially been skeptical, found herself sneaking smiles at the baby's playful giggles. Noah's presence brought life to the Dawson household, turning their cold mansion into a place of warmth and laughter. Evelyn also uncovered a few clues about Noah's background. Hidden inside the basket was a small silver locket engraved with the initials LR. Inside was a faded photograph of a woman holding a baby, her face weary but kind. Evelyn couldn't help but wonder about Noah's mother, who she was, why she made this decision, and whether she would ever return. At the same time, Mark began experiencing unexpected moments of vulnerability. One night, unable to sleep, he wandered into the nursery Evelyn had hastily put together. He found Noah lying awake, his tiny eyes wide and curious. Against his better judgment, Mark picked him up. As he rocked the baby awkwardly in his arms, he felt a strange sense of calm, as though the weight of the world momentarily lifted. But the walls around Mark's heart were thick. He threw himself deeper into work, hoping to maintain control over the one area of his life he understood. Evelyn noticed his absence more acutely than ever. Their conversations became arguments, and their arguments became silence. Yet, through it all, Noah's presence forced them to confront their deepest fears and desires. Evelyn realized how much she longed for connection, not just with Noah, but with Mark. Mark, on the other hand, was grappling with memories of his own troubled childhood, memories he had buried for decades. The turning point came when Evelyn organized a small dinner for a local charity. During the event, she gave a heartfelt speech about the power of second chances, using Noah's story as an example. Mark, sitting in the audience, couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt. He saw the light in Evelyn's eyes, the joy that Noah had brought her, and began to question whether his resistance was rooted in practicality or fear. As the weeks passed, the mysterious baby became an undeniable presence in Amelia's life. Each cry, coo, and tiny grasp of her finger further entrenched her in a world she hadn't prepared for. The child's name, scribbled hastily on a note found in the basket, was Ava. She seemed healthy, but there was something hauntingly fragile about her demeanor, as though she carried the weight of abandonment. Initially, Andrew avoided the nursery like it housed ghosts. His polished shoes never crossed the threshold, and his eyes darted away from Amelia whenever she cradled Ava in the living room. It was as though he feared acknowledging the child would breathe life into a reality he wasn't prepared to face. Amelia, on the other hand, found herself drawn deeper into Ava's innocent world. Amelia had hired Nanny Clara to help with Ava, a warm and patient woman who had decades of experience. Together, they worked to create a semblance of stability for the baby. But despite Clara's presence, Amelia felt the gap in Andrew's emotional absence. Conversations grew strained. Nights stretched long, with Amelia pacing the dimly lit nursery, while Ava whimpered, her cries echoing in the hollow mansion halls. One evening, Amelia confronted Andrew during dinner. The room was quiet except for the clinking of silverware. "You've barely looked at her since she arrived," Amelia said, her voice trembling but firm. Still, Mark wasn't ready to let his guard down completely. The more Evelyn pushed, the more he resisted, creating a tension that seemed insurmountable. But beneath the surface, cracks were beginning to form in Mark's carefully constructed facade. As Evelyn and Mark navigated this turbulent time, Noah remained at the center of their world, a small, fragile life that held the potential to either unite them or drive them apart. The stakes were growing higher, and the choices they made would soon determine the course of all their lives. Andrew paused, his fork mid-air, then placed it down with deliberate care. "And what do you want me to do, Amelia? Pretend this is normal? That this child is our responsibility? She's a human being, Andrew. She's not some inconvenience left on our doorstep. She's innocent in all this." Andrew pushed his chair back with a sharp scrape. His face was a mixture of anger and something deeper. Pain, perhaps. "I didn't sign up for this," he muttered before leaving the room. That night, as Amelia held Ava close, her mind replayed Andrew's words. She couldn't shake the feeling that his resistance was more than stubborn pride. The next morning, she turned to their longtime family friend and confidant, Margaret, who had worked with the Harts for decades. Margaret hesitated before speaking. "You know, Andrew wasn't always like this," she said, her voice tinged with melancholy. "What do you mean?" Amelia asked. Margaret sighed. "He's afraid, dear. Afraid of losing again. Years ago, before you met, Andrew's younger sister, Emily, passed away. She was only 7. A car accident. Andrew was supposed to be watching her that day, but he got distracted. He never forgave himself." Amelia felt her chest tighten. She knew Andrew carried pain, but she hadn't understood the depth of it. Suddenly, his coldness toward Ava made a tragic kind of sense. Ava was a reminder of everything he'd lost and feared losing again. In the following weeks, Amelia threw herself even more into caring for Ava. The mansion, once silent and pristine, now echoed with laughter, baby giggles, and the soft lullabies Amelia hummed. Each interaction with Ava, whether feeding her a bottle, reading to her by the fire, or simply holding her tiny hand, ignited something in Amelia. Ava became a mirror, reflecting parts of Amelia she hadn't realized were missing. She began to notice her own loneliness, the emptiness she'd ignored for years. The lavish parties and endless shopping trips that once filled her time now felt hollow in comparison to the simple joy of rocking Ava to sleep. One evening, Amelia returned from an outing with Ava to find something unexpected. Andrew in the nursery. He stood awkwardly by the crib, his hands resting on the edge. He didn't notice Amelia at first. His gaze was fixed on Ava, who lay peacefully sleeping. For a moment, Amelia saw something in his eyes, a flicker of warmth, perhaps even longing. "I didn't hear you come in," Andrew said, his voice softer than usual. "I didn't expect to find you here," Amelia replied, her tone cautious but hopeful. Andrew straightened, his mask of indifference slipping back into place. "I just wanted to check on her," he said before quickly leaving the room. Though brief, the moment filled Amelia with a fragile hope. She began to wonder if Ava might be the key to healing the wounds Andrew had buried so deeply. A turning point came one stormy afternoon. The rain lashed against the windows, and the power flickered intermittently. Amelia was busy preparing Ava's bottle in the kitchen when the baby's cries grew louder. Before she could return to the nursery, Andrew's voice called out from the hallway. "What do I do?" he shouted, panic evident in his tone. Amelia rushed upstairs to find Andrew holding Ava, his movements stiff and uncertain. She couldn't help but smile at the sight, her impeccably dressed husband cradling a baby with all the grace of a man juggling fire. "She's hungry," Amelia said gently, handing him the bottle. Andrew hesitated but took the bottle, his hands trembling slightly as he fed Ava. Slowly, her cries subsided, and Andrew's expression softened. For the first time, he allowed himself to truly look at her, to see her. "She's so small," he murmured, almost to himself. "She needs us," Amelia replied, her voice barely above a whisper. That evening, Amelia discovered a folded piece of paper tucked inside Ava's baby blanket. She'd seen it before but had been too overwhelmed to read it. Now, curiosity compelled her. The letter was written in a shaky hand. "To whoever finds her, please take care of my little girl. I can't give her the life she deserves, but I hope you can. Her name is Ava. She loves lullabies and being held close. Thank you for giving her a chance." Tears blurred Amelia's vision as she read. She showed the letter to Andrew later that night. For the first time, she saw him visibly moved. "Someone loved her enough to let her go," Amelia said. "We can't let that love end here." Andrew nodded, his silence speaking volumes. As the days turned into weeks, Andrew began spending more time with Ava. He read her bedtime stories, though he stumbled over the words. He sat with her by the piano, letting her tiny fingers press random keys. Slowly but surely, the walls he'd built around his heart began to crumble. For Amelia, watching Andrew with Ava was a revelation. She saw glimpses of the man she'd fallen in love with, a man capable of great love and compassion. Still, tension lingered. Andrew's journey to acceptance wasn't complete, and Amelia knew the real test was yet to come. It was the day after the unsettling visit from Sarah that everything began to shift. Amelia woke up early that morning, her mind still swirling with the implications of what had happened the previous day. Andrew's anger had simmered down, but he remained distant, conflicted by his emotions and the looming decision about Ava's biological mother. It had been a week since Sarah showed up at their door, and Andrew had not spoken to Amelia about it since. But today, things would change. Amelia found him staring at the family photograph on the mantel, his gaze fixated on their life before Ava came into the picture. "Andrew," Amelia called softly from behind. "We need to talk." He turned, and for the first time in a while, his eyes were not guarded. They were raw, filled with uncertainty and something else: regret. "Amelia, I don't know what to do. She's asking for something I can't give her." Andrew's voice cracked, the walls he'd been building up slowly crumbling. Amelia walked over to him, placing her hand on his shoulder. "What exactly are you afraid of, Andrew? That she'll take Ava from us? Or that we might fail?" He hesitated before responding, almost ashamed. "I'm afraid that by trying to protect her, I might push her away. I don't know how to love her like she deserves. What if I mess this up?" Amelia pulled him into a hug, whispering in his ear, "You're not alone in this, Andrew. We'll figure it out together, and I'll be there every step of the way." The next few days were tense. Amelia, while reassuring Andrew, felt the growing weight of their decisions pressing in on her. Ava, blissfully unaware of the turmoil surrounding her, continued to fill their home with joy and laughter. But Amelia's thoughts were consumed by the possibility of Ava's future and what it meant for their family. One evening, as the clock struck midnight, Andrew received a call that would push him to his emotional limits. Sarah was on the line, her voice frantic and trembling. "Andrew, I need help," she said, barely holding back tears. I can't do this anymore. I don't have anywhere to turn, and I need you." Andrew's heart skipped a beat, but a part of him recoiled at the idea. Yet he couldn't ignore the responsibility he felt for Ava's mother. Amelia overheard the call, and when Andrew hung up, he looked at her with a lost expression. "What now?" Amelia asked, concern clouding her face. "She's in trouble. She needs help, but I don't know if we should get involved," Andrew admitted, racked with indecision. Amelia, despite the emotions churning in her chest, responded with quiet resolve. "We can't just turn our backs on her. We have to do something." Later that week, Andrew and Amelia sat down to have the hardest conversation of their lives. "Amelia," Andrew began, "I've been thinking. Sarah, I know I can't change the past, but I want to do something for Ava. If she's going to know the truth, she needs to see how much we care for her, how much I care for her." Amelia looked into his eyes, trying to read him, trying to understand his shifting emotions. "Andrew, You've been terrified of loving her because of the hurt. I get it. But it's time to let go of that fear. For Ava. For us. Andrew nodded slowly, his heart swelling with emotions he hadn't known how to express. He took Amelia's hand, squeezing it gently. Let's adopt her. Let's make her ours. Legally. Completely. Tears welled in Amelia's eyes as the magnitude of their decision sank in. Are you sure? She asked, her voice trembling with emotion. I'm sure, Andrew said, his voice now firm and steady. We'll figure this out, together. It was the day after the unsettling visit from Sarah that everything began to shift. Amelia woke up early that morning, her mind still swirling with the implications of what had happened the previous day. Andrew's anger had simmered down, but he remained distant, conflicted by his emotions and the looming decision about Ava's biological mother. It had been a week since Sarah showed up at their door, and Andrew had not spoken to Amelia about it since. But today, things would change. Amelia found him staring at the family photograph on the mantel, his gaze fixated on their life before Ava came into the picture. Andrew, Amelia called softly from behind, we need to talk. He turned, and for the first time in a while, his eyes were not guarded. They were raw, filled with uncertainty and something else, regret. Amelia, I don't know what to do. She's asking for something I can't give her. Andrew's voice cracked, the walls he'd been building up slowly crumbling. Amelia walked over to him, placing her hand on his shoulder. What exactly are you afraid of, Andrew? That she'll take Ava from us, or that we might fail? He hesitated before responding, almost ashamed. I'm afraid that by trying to protect her, I might push her away. I don't know how to love her like she deserves. What if I mess this up? Amelia pulled him into a hug, whispering in his ear, You're not alone in this, Andrew. We'll figure it out together, and I'll be there every step of the way. The next few days were tense. Amelia, while reassuring Andrew, felt the growing weight of their decisions pressing in on her. Ava, blissfully unaware of the turmoil surrounding her, continued to fill their home with joy and laughter. But Amelia's thoughts were consumed by the possibility of Ava's future and what it meant for their family. One evening, as the clock struck midnight, Andrew received a call that would push him to his emotional limits. Sarah was on the line, her voice frantic and trembling. Andrew, I need help, she said, barely holding back tears. I can't do this anymore. I don't have anywhere to turn, and I need you. Andrew's heart skipped a beat, but a part of him recoiled at the idea. Yet he couldn't ignore the responsibility he felt for Ava's mother. Amelia overheard the call, and when Andrew hung up, he looked at her with a lost expression. What now? Amelia asked, concern clouding her face. She's in trouble. She needs help. But I don't know if we should get involved, Andrew admitted, racked with indecision. Amelia, despite the emotions churning in her chest, responded with quiet resolve. We can't just turn our backs on her. We have to do something. Later that week, Andrew and Amelia sat down to have the hardest conversation of their lives. Amelia, Andrew began, I've been thinking. Sarah, I know I can't change the past, but I want to do something for Ava. If she's going to know the truth, she needs to see how much we care for her, how much I care for her. Amelia looked into his eyes, trying to read him, trying to understand his shifting emotions. Andrew, you've been terrified of loving her because of the hurt. I get it, but it's time to let go of that fear. For Ava, for us. Andrew nodded slowly, his heart swelling with emotions he hadn't known how to express. He took Amelia's hand, squeezing it gently. Let's adopt her. Let's make her ours, legally, completely. Tears welled in Amelia's eyes as the magnitude of their decision sank in. Are you sure? She asked, her voice trembling with emotion. I'm sure, Andrew said, his voice now firm and steady. We'll figure this out, together. But just as things began to settle, a catastrophe struck. It happened so fast that neither Amelia nor Andrew had time to react. One afternoon, as they were playing outside with Ava in the garden, a sudden gust of wind caught them off guard. Ava, who had only just learned to walk, stumbled towards the edge of the stone steps leading to the garden pond. In an instant, Andrew's worst fear was realized. "No!" Andrew shouted, rushing toward Ava as she tottered dangerously close to the water's edge. But it was too late. In the blink of an eye, Ava fell into the freezing cold water. Panic gripped Andrew as he dove in after her, not caring about the danger to himself. His only thought was to save her. Amelia, frozen in place for a heartbeat, screamed. But Andrew was already there, lifting Ava from the icy water and clutching her to his chest. The sound of his ragged breaths and Ava's frantic cries were the only things Amelia could hear as she rushed over. With shaking hands, Andrew pulled Ava to the stone path and began frantically rubbing her tiny body to warm her. "Ava, come on, sweetheart. Wake up, please," he begged, his voice cracking with fear. Amelia immediately called 911 as she pressed her daughter to her chest, her tears falling freely. Andrew was shaking, not just from the cold, but from the terrifying realization of how fragile life truly was. He had come so close to losing everything. Within moments, the paramedics arrived. They took over, quickly assessing Ava and confirming that she would be okay, shaken but unharmed. The relief that washed over Andrew and Amelia was palpable, but they both knew this would forever change their relationship with fear, love, and responsibility. Later that night, after everything settled down and the danger had passed, Andrew and Amelia found themselves in the quiet of their bedroom, staring at the baby monitor where Ava slept peacefully. They sat in silence for a long time, their thoughts racing. "I was so scared, Amelia," Andrew confessed, his voice barely a whisper. "I didn't know if I could keep her safe. I thought I was going to lose her." Amelia reached over, placing her hand gently on his. "But you didn't, Andrew. You were there for her. You saved her. And that's what matters." Andrew turned to look at her, his eyes full of gratitude. "I never thought I'd feel this way again. After everything, I didn't know I could love anyone so much." Amelia smiled, wiping away the tears that had formed. "Love doesn't come with guarantees, Andrew, but you'll never be alone in this. We're in this together. Always." And in that moment, they both knew. Love was worth the risk. It was worth everything. In the aftermath of the incident with Ava, Andrew and Amelia found themselves in an unfamiliar place, a place of vulnerability, but also newfound strength. They had both faced their deepest fears that day, and in doing so, they had come to realize something profoundly simple. Their love for Ava was unconditional, and they were willing to do anything to protect her. Over the next few weeks, they began to rebuild their family. Every moment was now steeped in a sense of purpose and understanding, and they found themselves navigating the world differently, more connected, more open to the possibilities of tomorrow. One afternoon, as Amelia was preparing lunch in the kitchen, Andrew walked in with Ava in tow, her tiny hand clutching his fingers. The sight of them, Andrew, strong and certain, and Ava, full of energy and joy, was a reminder of just how far they had come. "Mom, look!" Ava exclaimed, holding up a small drawing she had made of their family. It was crude, but the love that radiated from it was unmistakable. "I made this for you." Amelia's heart melted as she crouched down to Ava's level, taking the picture in her hands. "This is beautiful, sweetheart," she said softly, her voice full of emotion. "Thank you." Andrew, who had been standing by the doorway, observed the scene with a quiet smile. As the days passed, he began to truly realize the depth of his own feelings for Ava, his daughter. He wasn't just protecting her anymore, he was a father to her. "Maybe we should start planning the adoption," Amelia suggested gently, still holding the drawing in her hands. "It's time to make it official." Andrew looked at her, his heart swelling with love for both of them. "I agree. We'll make it official. She's ours, Amelia, and I'll never let her go. While their new life together was blossoming, Andrew's past continued to haunt him. There were still unresolved questions about his relationship with Sarah, and he knew he had to confront her, if not for himself, then for Ava. His unresolved guilt had been a lingering shadow, and it was time to face it head-on. One evening, Andrew sat down with Amelia and shared his decision. "I'm going to meet with Sarah," he said, his voice steady but carrying the weight of a decision long overdue. "I need to find closure, Amelia. I need to face my mistakes before they follow me forever." Amelia looked at him, her expression a mixture of support and concern. "I understand, Andrew. Just remember why you're doing this. For us. For Ava." A week later, Andrew drove to Sarah's apartment, his hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. He wasn't sure what to expect, whether they would argue or if they could finally find a way to move forward. But as he stood in front of her door, he realized that it didn't matter. The point wasn't what had happened in the past. It was about what they could do for Ava now. When Sarah opened the door, she looked at him with a mix of surprise and exhaustion. "Andrew," she said softly, "I didn't think you would come." Andrew hesitated for a moment before stepping inside. "I had to," he admitted. "We need to talk. About Ava." The conversation that followed was long and emotional. Andrew and Sarah both spoke honestly, perhaps for the first time in years, about their shared history, their regrets, and what they could do moving forward. But there was one crucial moment when Sarah, her voice full of remorse, admitted something Andrew hadn't expected to hear. "I made so many mistakes, Andrew," Sarah said, her voice trembling with regret. "I wasn't there for Ava when she needed me. I know I can't fix the past, but I want to make it right. If you'll let me, I want to help you raise her. I don't deserve it, but I can't live with the idea that I failed her." Andrew looked at her, his own emotions swirling. He had never expected this offer, and it shook him to his core. But after a moment of reflection, he realized that what mattered most now was Ava's future, not his past with Sarah. "I don't know if I can forgive you completely, Sarah," Andrew said honestly, "but I'm willing to give you a chance. Not for me, but for Ava." They sat there in silence for a while, each of them lost in their thoughts. It was the beginning of a healing process that would take time, but they both knew that it was necessary. Sarah's commitment to Ava was genuine, and Andrew felt a flicker of hope that this family, this fractured family, could heal. Back at home, Amelia and Andrew's bond deepened as they made concrete plans for the future. The adoption papers were in progress, and Andrew felt a sense of peace he had not experienced in years. He no longer feared his own past, and his focus had shifted entirely to Ava and the family he and Amelia were building together. One day, as they sat at the kitchen table, planning their next steps, Andrew turned to Amelia with a thoughtful expression. "I've been thinking," he began. "Maybe we could start a foundation, something to give back to children who don't have the opportunities that Ava has. We can create a safe place for kids to grow up, with mentors, with guidance." Amelia's face lit up as she listened to his idea. "That sounds amazing, Andrew. We can make it happen. We'll make sure that no child feels the way we did growing up." Together, they began brainstorming the details of what would eventually become their legacy, a foundation that would help children in need, ensuring that they had the love and guidance they needed to succeed. As the story draws to a close, we reflect on the incredible journey of Andrew, Amelia, and Ava. A journey filled with love, resilience, and the power of second chances. Their story isn't just about overcoming challenges, it's a reminder that even in our darkest moments, hope and connection can light the way. Now, we want to hear from you. What would you do if you were given a second chance to reconnect, to rebuild, or to create something meaningful? Andrew and Amelia's journey shows us that it's never too late to open your heart and make a difference, not just in your life, but in the lives of others. If this story moved you, don't let it end here. Share your thoughts in the comments below, whether it's about a moment that touched your heart or an experience of your own. We'd love to hear your perspective. And if you haven't already, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an inspiring story like this one. Help us spread messages of hope and love by sharing this video with someone who might need it today. Remember, every act of kindness, every decision to reach out, creates ripples that can change the world. Thank you for watching, and until next time, keep believing in the power of connection, compassion, and second chances.